Hello and welcome to Inside the IDB, or Dentro del BID, a space where we open our doors to you and tell you a little about how life is at our organization. Today's event features Jessica Bedoya, our Chief of Staff and Executive Advisor of the Office of the Presidency, and Henry Mooney, our Economic Advisor for the Caribbean Department and Secretary of the IDB Afro-Descendant Alliance Group, who will discuss with you the importance of celebrating Black History Month in Latin America and the Caribbean.
Henry, I wanted to ask you, tell us about the significance about this month for you personally.
So first of all, thanks very much, Jessica, for taking the time to speak with us and to talk about ADAG and the work that we do here. And as you mentioned, our group is called ADAG, which is the Afro-Descendant Alliance Group here at the Inter-American Development Bank. So as you mentioned, I'm part of the executive team. I'm the executive secretary for the group. I myself am actually a dual Brazilian and Canadian citizen. My mother is Afro-Brazilian and my father is French-Canadian. And I grew up between Canada and Latin America, and I've been with the IDB since 2017, here now in DC as a regional macroeconomist. But previously I was in the IDB's Jamaica office, which is the regional hub for the Caribbean. So maybe I'll say a word or two about ADAG first. So ADAG is an employee resource group here in the IDB. We have about 90 members of staff, both in Washington and also in our country offices all around the region. We basically have two objectives, and one is raising awareness, and the second is creating a community of support for our members on the staff. Now, in terms of creating awareness, it's creating awareness of the challenges and the issues facing staff of Afro descent at the IDB, everything from issues regarding representation and recruitment to retention, to professional and personal development, and also creating a community of support for each other, providing mentoring opportunities, technical opportunities, advice, helping people figure out how to move to Washington and live in the city when they may come from other places. So we're really a group of staff trying to work to help and improve the lives of the staff and membership. Now, one of the things that I mentioned was awareness, raising awareness, which is one of our core activities and core objectives. And now, one thing that's probably worth mentioning, in terms of Afro-descendants in the region, we represent about 25%. Afro-descendants are about 25% of the population of Latin America and the Caribbean, whereas at present, based on the latest information that we have, only about 6% of the staff of the IDB self-identify as being of Afro descent. So it just points to the fact that there are challenges that need to be overcome, and there's work to be done in order to make sure that our staff is as diverse and inclusive as we'd like our region to be. And for that reason, we're very encouraged by the focus and emphasis that you and your colleagues on the management team have placed on these issues, even in your first few weeks and months here with the IDB. So we're really looking forward to working with you. Now, in terms of Black History Month, well, of course, this is an opportunity to focus on issues that are important to Afro-descendants, not only in the United States and Canada, but also throughout the region. So we see this as a great opportunity to focus on some key initiatives that we are working on this year and to hold a few events. And we can talk about those later, but this is just one opportunity of many throughout the year to focus on some of our key objectives and issues.
Thank you, Henry. I think diversity and inclusion is a really important topic that all of us have to really address on a near daily basis. I think that the issues of recent history have shown us that these are heavy hitting and controversial issues that we have to face. I know here at the bank, at the Inter-American Development Bank, we're doing a lot on these efforts. Henry's just one example, but I did want to emphasize that diversity and inclusion shouldn't just be buzzwords. They need to be themes in our lives. They need to be principles that we use as guides in our daily work life and our personal life, and that we shouldn't be scared of discussing. And I think that the purpose of these types of conversations and platforms help us along the way. I want to talk a little bit about the sense of belonging. I think belonging can be defined in very different ways. And I'd be interested in hearing from you, Henry, kind of what has your experience been on a personal and professional level on how you define belonging? I know I have my own definition. It's very subjective, especially at an institutional level. So I think that would help our audience understand a little bit of your perspective too.
That's a great question. I mean, I think belonging is extremely important to us, but also to our colleagues from other groups, and especially employee resource groups within the IDB. Now, we work very closely with them, and there are other ERGs that focus on gender inclusion, on issues of sexual identity, and on disabilities. So we all work closely together and also independently to try and build a sense of community and belonging within the institution. And that works through networking, it works through providing information to each other, it works in terms of building communities, not only communities of practice, but sort of more informal communities on the staff. Of course, this is an institution that draws people from all over the world, not just the Americas, even from Europe and further afield. So when people who have experiences can come together and talk about issues that they face, this is sort of part of what we see as building a community. And maybe on that point, it's worth noting that we see this as something that's not just about the staff of the IDB. As with the other employee resource groups, many of the challenges that the institution faces in terms of diversity and inclusion are really the same challenges that we face as an institution, the work that we do in the field, right? So some of the key objectives of this institution that I work on in the Caribbean region, that our colleagues work on all over the region, are things that are directly affecting these groups. And that's access to education, it's financial inclusion, it's social inclusion, access to social services. It has to do with economic mobility and marginalization. So I think it's more than just communities within the bank. These are issues that affect the bank and the work of the bank. And we think that by promoting greater diversity and inclusion on the staff, we can not only promote our well-being, but the well-being of our clients and the work of the institution more broadly.
And I just wanted to add to that, and thank you for those insights. I did want to speak just as we as a new administration, we view this as a holistic effort within the institution. So the onus isn't just on the new administration. It's not just on Henry as part of an employee resource group. It's not on just the employee resource groups. This is everyone's job every day. This is everyone's responsibility to inculcate and to promote a culture of diversity and inclusion that is holistic, that is real, that is authentic. I think that these conversations and learning more about the groups myself as a new member of this amazing organization, I've realized that more and more, this is everyone's job, managers on down, staff on up. It's a process of education. It's a process of articulation of ideas and philosophies, and it's an understanding of the world that we're living in. As a multilateral development bank, you're absolutely right. These are issues that we face in the region, and Latin America and the Caribbean are incredibly diverse, linguistically, culturally, affinity-wise. So this is something that is of great importance to this institution. And I just wanted to emphasize that for us at the bank, as a group, all of us are trying to do the best that we can to foster this, not only internally, but as Henry said, foster it as a philosophy externally, so our clients understand that this is how we view the world. So I wanted to just give Henry a couple of opportunities here to highlight some upcoming events for his employee resource group and for what we're doing here at the bank to promote a lot of this diversity and inclusion.
Sure, thank you, Jessica. As I mentioned before, we see this month is very important to us because it's one that puts a focus on some of the key issues. So we're taking this opportunity to organize a few events that we think are going to be exciting both for the staff and also going to be available to people outside the bank. So one of the first is going to be on February 18th, where we're actually partnering with one of the other ERGs that I mentioned before that focuses on gender inclusion. And we're going to have the first event is going to be focused on, I don't know if you've seen the movie Hidden Figures or read the book. And this is a story about NASA and sort of the barriers and challenges faced by African Americans at that time in terms of assimilating into the institution. It's really a story of triumph. So we're going to have a focus on that for those who have seen the movie, and those who haven't, maybe it's an opportunity to see it. And we're going to be speaking with a woman from NASA who is actually a scientist and also an Afro-descendant, and talking about sort of how things have evolved over the last 30 or 40 years since that movie was set, or a little longer even, and having a discussion about some of the other issues around that in terms of gender inclusion and also in terms of barriers facing Afro-descendants. We also have another event that is planned for later in the month on the 26th of February, And that'll be a discussion between our staff and management and the president of Howard University, which, as you may know, is a historically Black college based in Washington, D.C. And it'll be a conversation to celebrate sort of some of the accomplishments and achievements of Afro-descendants, not only in the United States, but elsewhere in terms of contributions to culture, to music, to literature, to thinking, and to all sorts of other important things. So I think we have a few really important and exciting events for February, but we have many more planned throughout the year, as of course, that conversation will continue and our work will continue.
Thanks for sharing. And all of those sound great and interesting. I can tell you for one, our new president, Mauricio Clever-Caron, and myself and all of our staff and our executive team will be very interested in participating and sharing this information with all of their staff. I wanted to just also provide a couple of insights from us, again, more broadly in terms of diversity inclusion, myself included. I think hearing Henry's story has really inspired me as well as a Hispanic woman growing up in this country, that again, these are issues that just because we have designated months that provide us an opportunity to have these conversations that facilitate events, we need to have them every day, every month. I think it's a virtue for all of us to be able to have these conversations, to have a dialogue on these issues, and to be open and honest with each other. I think that for our employee resource groups as well, that should be a mission. I've been very involved working with our human resources department, and Henry's my first interaction. I'm very excited about it. I hope first of many to talk about the pathways that we're going to carve together on all of these important issues. I did want to open it up. I'm sorry I didn't say it at the start, but for anyone in the audience who has any questions for Henry or for myself on the bank, on our vision, I welcome anyone's inputs and questions before we close. If you don't have any more questions, I actually have one. I'm one of the first ones with a question, and I wanted to ask Henry a little bit about your professional trajectory and what drove you to work on development issues, because that's also a very particular passion for a lot of individuals.
Getting myself off mute there. Well, thanks for asking. I mean, like I said, I've worked with the IDB both in the field in Jamaica and now here in DC since 2017. Before joining the IDB, I've worked for several international financial institutions. I worked for the IMF here, the International Monetary Fund here in DC and elsewhere. I worked with the World Bank, and I worked in investment banking with Morgan Stanley in London. So many of the things that I have done are related to international development work, and I think it's an interest. Now that I think about it, I mean, I think my personal experience, was really influential in my choosing my path professionally in life. I mean, some of my first memories are remembering my mother showing me her collection of defunct Brazilian currencies, the Cruzeiro, the Cruzado, all these currencies that no longer exist, and sort of being fascinated by economics and why that had an impact on development and why some countries did well and some countries didn't. And having lived between Latin America and Canada, growing up, sort of seeing how just taking an 8-hour flight meant such an incredible difference in terms of the way people lived. So I think that's sort of where my passion for development work came from. And coming to the IDB has been really a tremendous experience, being able to work in the field as well as from headquarters on the region. That means so much to me, I think is really an incredible opportunity. And as you said before, I mean, I think, we need to lead by example. The IDB is also extremely interesting in that so many people who work for the IDB, it's such a respected institution in our region that they end up leaving the IDB and being leaders at home, right? So presidents and prime ministers and ministers of finance. And so I think that this is really an important institution in ways beyond just the work we do on the ground. And that's why working for some of these ERGs and these issues in the institution are important for the institution.
Thank you for that. And I love hearing those stories. And I have to jump to some questions before we lose time, but I did just want to add a little anecdote that I find is enjoyable. I've been asking a lot of individuals here at the bank, what brought you to the bank? What was that passion? What was that drive? I know what it was for me. And I had a very similar experience growing up in a household where my father's from Colombia, my mother's from Ecuador, but very assimilated into American culture. I had a very American upbringing, but I knew certain things were different about me. Every Sunday, my grandmother would check the currency for the Ecuadorian Sucre? Was it up or down? And I always asked, why does that matter? Every Sunday, the phone would ring, the landline phone would ring from Colombia, but you could only call within a certain hour because the lines weren't very good and the connections weren't good. And I remember asking, why was that? And it's that curiosity that comes from in the house, from your formative years, educational, professional experiences. And I found that the IDB really is a mosaic of all of those experiences, and it's very beautiful. And I think that's something we have to take advantage of and take the reins of and spread it all over as much as we can, the region and with our clients, so that everyone understands the powerful work that we are trying to do every day. With that, I wanted to turn, we did receive one question. I wanted to ask, we received a few. What are the most important actions that employees can take to support underrepresented groups?
Well, I think that's a great question. And going back to what the ERGs do in the institution, I mean, we are a group of staff working on behalf of the staff and the groups that we represent, but we are also open to sort of being joined by people who support these objectives of diversity and inclusion. So I think in terms of just being aware of the challenges that are being faced by your colleagues, whether it's on the basis of cultural identity, sexual identity, gender, background, etc. I think being aware and doing whatever you can sort of as a manager, as a colleague, as a subordinate to sort of make sure that as you work together, you understand that these are important issues for the institution more generally. But again, I think it's about community. And as you said, the IDB is a big community in itself, and making sure that, so we make an effort to understand each other is very, very important in the multilateral context.
Agreed. Another question that we received that I think I'll punt to you first, and then I'll provide my perspective. I don't want to bias any answers. What is the role of leaders in making an inclusive workplace, and what is the IDB doing? So I'd love to hear your perspective.
I think that's a great question, and I think this conversation is an excellent example of what leaders like you can do to sort of advance the conversation and to raise awareness and to sort of put this issue front and center. So first of all, I think that's a great example, and I think as I mentioned, the statistics are representative of the challenges that the institution faces. Only 6%, for example, of the staff of the institution are Afro-descendant, compared to almost a third of the region. So just being aware that making sure that, for example, in recruitment and hiring processes, that you're keeping in mind that maybe you have to fling the net further afield to sort of make sure that you get diverse candidates. That's important. And making sure that, again, this is an institution that represents the region that we work in. I think if you're conscious of that, you can really move the objective forward.
I just wanted to add, I think I would love this opportunity to again emphasize that as a new administration coming in, we see everyone as responsible for these issues in terms of what can leaders do to make it an inclusive workplace, believe in the principles that we discuss, believe in these conversations, believe in the fact that none of these issues are taboo. Don't run from issues, don't run from problems, face them, talk to staff. Iterative conversations that are not only part of the philosophy we're trying to spread in this institution, that should be part of professional development, they should be part of the everyday work. Everyone that walks through these doors should feel like they are part of a broader mission that's much bigger than all of us, that will have lasting impact beyond our own time in this amazing building that we're in Washington. I think we need to all be responsible, all hold that banner of diversity and inclusion. I know I've had a lot of conversations here as well about women and women's economic empowerment in the region. Women's empowerment starts at the workplace here for us, and we're trying to spread that message too. It's for every one of these diversity and inclusion issues, for every group that we have ERGs for. Everything that we talk about, we need to talk the talk and walk the walk. And that's the expectation that we have from our new president. That's the mandate our executive team has received. And we're hopeful that conversations like these will help emphasize that the expectation goes all the way down and all the way up. It's a fluid movement. So I just wanted to share that view before we go to closing. I wanted to thank all of you who contributed to the questions and for the insights. I want to thank you personally, Henry. It's been wonderful having this conversation with you, and I hope it's not the last one.
Thanks so much, Jessica. It's been a pleasure.
Wonderful. And I wanted to put in a plug for this amazing institution. For those of you that are interested in learning more about the IDB, IDB Group, IDB Invest, IDB Lab, please go to our websites. Please check out our career HR site and send any questions that way. we'd welcome your interest and we'd welcome your participation.